This is Ethan. I'm just kidding. But we're about to head to the museum. Wait, what? The Metropolitan. With Dr. Foreman and the honors group. They like host these trips every like once a semester. And we miss. Yes, it is. It's like you don't go to the American Wing twice in one semester. We missed it a lot of times. We're finally going though. Plus, this serves another purpose, as I'm going to ask Dr. Foreman if he's teaching the archaeology class next semester. Okay, bye. Hi. Nice meeting you here like this. We went the long way. We're gonna go take the 30 to the F train to Lexington 63rd. Then we're transferring to the 6 or the 8 or the C or the E. Lexington 59th. It's really warm in here. We have arrived at the Metropolitan. There you go, quite nice, the edifice of this building. The inside's obviously better, duh. Suspect number 1, missing a nose.
We're coming back to her.
I love you.
Everything today that we're going to look at in the American Wing, it's back there, the American Wing. Everything that we're going to look at has to do with the rise of New York City. So that's the general theme. And I thought of calling it Sex in the City, because almost everything we're going to look at has something to do with sex too. Right? This is Diana, and I guess you know who she is, right? From mythology, she is
Goddess of the Hunt.
Yeah, she's associated with the goddess with the hunt. As you know, Madison Square Garden has moved like 3 times, even though it's retained the name. So, if you are familiar with the area, it's right to the north of the Flatiron Building. If you know where that is, that's Madison Square. And if you know where the old New York Life building is, that would be at I guess about 200 Madison Avenue, just at about 24th Street. That would be where the original Madison Square Garden stood. Now, if you look at page 1 of your handout, what you will see is a rather bilious looking Diana of the Tower, as she is called. You notice this lady way down here, way up here? Mm-hmm. Right? She really does need a couple of sessions at Weight Watchers. I think you can imagine, right? She's sort of bilious in the middle, right? It could just be bloating or whatever, but whatever it is, she needs something. Now, what happened is that statue was originally installed when the original Madison Square Garden was built. Now, the original Madison Square Garden is down in the lower left. You see the lower left image, right? So if you look way up at the spire, you see that's where she would be. And so she was called Diana of the Tower because she was essentially a weather vane. And when the wind blew one way or the other way, you see, her arrow would move this way, or that way, or this way, or that way. Stanford White was an outrageous ladies' man. Let's see, did I put his picture in here? I hope I did. Yes. If you would turn to page, it would be page 4, unnumbered. Page 4. So there's Stanford White with the mustache. Now, ladies, I ask you, could you go for someone who looked like that? He really does look sort of like an overweight walrus. but what of course he had was lots and lots of money. So he was a very well-known architect. He actually, he was responsible for, let me think now, the Washington Square Arch. He was responsible for that. for Judson Memorial Church on the other side of Washington Square Park. He did that. He did the original Madison Square Garden. What else did he do? Let me think. Stanford White. Oh, the municipal building. The municipal building on Chambers Street, way down Manhattan. He did that. So he really was a hot architect, pun intended. And he attached himself to this lady. This is Evelyn Nesbit. Evelyn Nesbit was a Floridora girl. The Floridora girls were sort of like the Rockettes, only just a little bit looser, if you know what I mean, right? So I mean, the Rockettes are, you know, all squeaky clean. The Floridora girls would, well, they were sought after, let's put it that way. And if you look at that picture and consider that it was taken in 1906, that's a pretty sexy photograph for 1906, what do you think? Right? So what happened is that Evelyn Nesbit's husband, I'll tell you, these ladies were really poor in their choice of men. You know, I wish I'd been around in those days, but anyway, what's his name? Harry Thaw. Harry Thaw is Evelyn Nesbit's husband, right? Girls, could you go for him? I mean, he's a little better than Stanford White, but not much. Anyway, this statue was above the garden of Madison Square Garden. The garden of Madison Square Garden was a beer garden, right? And everybody would go and have, it was like a fancy restaurant. So one evening, and it was in June, I was just checking, June 29th, 1906, Stanford White is having dinner with his new beloved, Evelyn Nesbit, right under the statue of Diana. Again, I emphasize, this is just a recasting in miniature of the original statue. This is not the original statue. You'll see it, Stanford White made them in large, medium, and small sizes and kept recasting them, okay? Because they were very popular. So, he's under the statue. Suddenly, Harry Thaw walks up, catches them, not exactly in flagrante, but in the middle of a tender moment at dinner, pulls out a gun and shoots Stanford White dead, right under the statue. Stanford White, for all of his talents as an architect, must have been a really hideous human being. I mean, he really had a lot of trouble keeping his pants closed. And one of the results of that was, by the way, that a whole, it was kind of a what would you call it? A kind of a, like an urban legend, but it did go around that whenever Stanford White was entertaining a woman in his townhouse, which was on 24th Street, just behind Madison Square Garden. By the way, it just fell down about 15 years ago, right? It fell down out of neglect. The Diana would point her arrow in his direction. That is, the wind would blow that way. And it was not without reason, because Stanford White had a living room unlike any other living room in that 24th Street townhouse. It was carpeted in red velvet, with red velvet on the walls and ceilings, and a trapeze hanging from the ceiling, on which he used to make his mistresses swing back and forth naked. All of this around 1903, 1904, 1905. The second drawing, again it's a drawing. This is Wall Street, running north-south. Running in the foreground is Broad Street. And if you look really carefully, you can see the branch bank of the United States. Do you see it? Right? Now, if you look really carefully at the photograph, this is the only photograph I could find. This is the famous statue of Washington. You're looking down Wall Street, right? Down Wall Street toward the East River. It's the lower, on the lower left. See the photograph of Washington? This is the Sub-Treasury building, now called the Federal Hall Memorial. And opposite is the original J.P. Morgan, House of Morgan, Morgan Private Investment Bank. But look very carefully on the Sub-Treasury side of the street, where the Washington statue is. Can you see? You can actually see the photograph of this. It's the only photograph, I think, that still exists of the building. So that photograph was taken about 1900. The photograph of Wall Street looking east. Does everyone have this?
Yes.
I give you? Yeah, okay, good. Now, what's interesting about the building, I can talk about it if you want. It's obviously federal design, but you can also see that the pilasters are the columns that are not freestanding. You see they're against the wall. They're called pilasters. They're ionic. The ionic volutes, the ram's horn capitals. Right? And what makes it particularly an American building is that it combines that classical design with a Neo-Georgian design, that is an English design, on the lower floor. So you have the fan window, you see, over the main entrance. And the interesting thing about this building, if you look at the height of the building, that would be the average height of the buildings in New York City around 1900. Large, medium, and small. So this would be the version that would be available for a collector, perhaps, right? So I'm sure you've all seen this before, right? First as soldier, and then as statesman. And this is.
Look at this. It's Assassin's Creed Unity. As much as I love the art of the Pacific Islands, I get a strange sense of foreboding when I enter here. It might have something to do with elongated figures, right? Like it's pretty scary, right?
Here, so museum.
That's fucking scary though. Jesus. Oh my god. What am I looking at here? Is it a bad acid trip or a nightmare?
Well, didn't they use psychedelics?
Yeah, a lot of psychedelics, but this time if I'm shaking, it's because I'm scared, not because of the coffee. But it's like so interesting to see how different forms of art evolved. Like, what the hell am I looking for? Is this a praying mantis? It is a praying mantis. Look at these alien fellas. And it's all wooden. I don't know how any of this survived. It's insane. Gorgeous though. In its own very spooky way, where I feel like the eyes are following me. I'm actually too scared to even like move. I don't know why. Okay, this was on someone's head. I think I saw a movie about this with Jim Carrey in it. This guy's holding his own head. So cute, the Scottish folds. Where's the other one?
He's pointing at us.
Oh, it's cute. Hi, if it's not in the dark, it's in my bathroom. At least this is a kind of nice, makes my face look red though. Anyway, what I wanted to say was Kimberly and I watched Raiders of the Lost Ark yesterday, and she said it was better than Star Wars, which I'll agree with. but that she didn't like it that much. Why doesn't she like good movies? Someone tell me. We have a philosophy test this week, but we missed a lecture last week, so we don't know if... I keep saying philosophy, but I mean psychology. I don't know if that means we're still going to have it or not. Hopefully we don't. I don't know, it's self-study anyway, but maybe he'll extend it by 1 day, hopefully. Anyway, I'm going to go to bed now, and I think I have enough footage now with Super Bowl and the Dr. Foreman's tour. Maybe I'll keep a lot of it. This might be a slightly longer vlog, but we'll see. Anyway, I'm going to go to bed. Thanks for watching, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll be back with more content soon.